Hey guys, Lona Leugers here, Leugers Real Estate Advisors, Jones & Co. Realty. Today I am here with
Angela Pedrick with Fidelity National Title.
And we are at Fox News 92.5. We're super excited to shoot our weekly radio show. Today we're going to be talking about all things title, closings, title insurance. We're really going to dig into Angela's knowledge and expertise on that subject and hopefully answer a lot of our listeners' questions.
So Angela, let's start off by talking about settlement or closing. This is obviously a popular subject. Everybody loves to talk about, or everybody loves to get to the closing table, right? And since we live in such a unique area, a unique area where the real estate market is where we serve customers from all around the world. Tell our listeners what closing actually means.
We use the term closing pretty much, or settlement. And closing is basically the day that we transfer title. So it's the day that the new owners become owners, the sellers, hopefully get lots of money, and the buyers become broke. So it just depends on the situation. But for Florida, we are a title company state, meaning we don't need attorneys to do our closings either. So that's a lot. We get a lot of questions from Northerners because a lot of those states up north have attorneys, and it's required that an attorney close your transaction. So here in Florida, it's a little different. We don't need attorneys, so we save a lot of money that way.
And they usually have lawyers on both sides, right?
Yes.
The buyer will have a lawyer, the seller will have a lawyer.
Right, so typically settlement fees and closing fees are doubled. So.
But generally, isn't at every title company they have a go-to attorney though, right?
We have an underwriting attorney, yes. Okay. So we do have someone that we could talk to if a situation comes up that is complicated or we just need some advice. Yeah, every title company has one.
Awesome.
Perfect. So where do closings typically take place?
Closings typically take place in our office, but we are mobile, so we can go I've gone to hospitals for closings. I've gone to a jail for closings.
Oh, wow.
A jail for closings?
Yeah. So, people got to sell.
Just curious, was it a murder?
I have no idea.
I don't even know.
No clue, but it was interesting.
Yeah.
So we can do closings pretty much anywhere. Mail-away closings are possible as well. So if you have a seller who's living out of state, because Fidelity is so large, we usually have an office that's within their range of driving. If not, we set one up with a mobile notary. So that's possible too.
Yeah, I'd say that about 90% of our closings, because we are in a second home market. So most of the time, when it gets to closing, buyer or seller or both are living out of state somewhere else. So a lot of our closings are done by mail.
Yes. Yeah, I've seen it a lot lately, especially lately that we have a lot of snowbirds selling. So a lot of the time they don't come for closing.
So you just mail the packages off to them?
Yeah, we work with the lender. We make sure that the lender is aware that the seller or buyer is not going to be present for closing. When it's a buyer, it's actually a little bit more tricky because we have to work with the lender as well because they need to get us our documents in advance. But with the sellers, normally we call them right off the bat when we get the contract and we ask them if they're going to be here. So we know right away. If they're not going to be, then we set it all up. We send them the documents ahead of time. So by the time we have those documents back, we want those documents back in our office at closing or on the day of closing.
We all hope that closing can be a happy time, but the reality of it is that closing can be a really stressful time for many people. So how do you guys help buyers and sellers feel at ease?
Communication is really the number one thing that we stress. So we want to be able to communicate at all times. We call them and we set up expectations with the sellers and buyers. This is what's going on. This is our process. If you don't hear from us, it's probably a good thing. So just making sure that they understand our processes as a title company and what we have to do for them. And just giving them kind of like a timeline. I think that helps ease a lot of their mind. We usually call them when the title commitment comes back, and the commitment is basically a list of requirements that we have to fulfill in order to be able to transfer a clear title. So once that comes back, we'll usually give them a call and be like, hey, don't worry, everything's clear on your title, there's no issues. We may need to order a payoff or something along those lines. But other than that, and then we let them know when closing is scheduled. And then on the buyer side, it's more of, making sure we're kind of the middleman between them and their lender and the surveyors and all the people involved. So we try to get back with them and give them a timeline as well on that.
So Angela, let's talk about, you mentioned a little bit about your process. Can you walk us through sort of a detailed step-by-step of what your process is, really paint a picture for our listeners of what goes on behind the scenes at the title company?
Yeah, of course. So normally we get emailed the contract, and then right from there we put it into our system and we request the title search to be done. Title searches can take anywhere from 2 days to a week, depends on the type of property it is, how large the property is.
So do you have a special designated person that receives that and is
we have
like
an
your data
entire
entry?
department,
Okay.
an entire department that is just for that. So so the contract comes in, we submit that for our title search, and then we wait. Within the waiting period is usually when our escrow deposit's received from the buyer. It can be received by wire or check, and then when that's received, we input that into the system, we record it onto the file, and we turn in the escrow verification to on both sides of the transaction, because normally that's contractual. Once the title commitment comes back, like I said, that's a list of requirements that we have to do in order to provide a clear title. That document, the title commitment, is what's going to give us the outline of what kind of work we have to do. And then we get started. Once that's finished, once all those check marks are off on that list, that's basically when we can go to closing. If it's a cash deal, it's pretty much, we're done, we're ready to go. If it's financed, then we get with the lender. We submit all of our documents to the lender as well, so they can have it simultaneously on their paperwork for our fees and things like that. And then we just communicate with the lender on when we can close.
Do you have any advice for our listeners that might be buying or selling real estate? Some things that they can do to really prepare themselves ahead of time to help relieve some of that stress?
Yes. So I'm going to break this down into two different parts, one for sellers and one for buyers, because they're very different.
Perfect.
If you are going to be selling your home, I highly recommend checking with your mortgage company and getting a payoff already. Most of the time we all are in the digital age. We can check on our apps now for our payoffs.
So if a seller has a mortgage
Yes.
on their current property.
Yes, a mortgage or even a home equity line of credit, be aware of what your payoff is so there's no surprises at closing. And be aware that your title company or your closer is going to need that information to be able to pull that payoff.
May I add something to that?
Yes.
Please be aware, sellers, that mortgage interest is calculated in arrears.
Yes.
So when you get your balance on your mortgage, that is not necessarily your payoff.
No, you normally have an entire another month of interest that's going to be added on top of that current balance.
So many sellers just don't factor that in, so I wanted to make sure we covered that.
And also if you have a mortgage on your home, most of the time you're having your taxes and your insurance escrowed. So the lender is the one who's collecting those into a separate escrow account. That money will be refunded to you by your lender, normally within 10 days of the payoff. So again, as a seller, make sure you have your mortgage information ready. If you have property in a trust, make sure you have your trust documents. If somebody is deceased that's on title, make sure you have death certificates. So just be aware that we'll need information if you have any unusual circumstance in your title. And then buyers, just be very conscious of that your lender is on a tight deadline with the documents they are requesting from you. So if you got an email from your lender saying, hey, we need this, I would do that immediately, because a lot of the time our holdups in closing are because the buyers did not get the documents requested by their lenders in time to them, so it holds up closing.
Wow, you see that a lot
Yes.
from your side? Yeah.
Yes, we do. Yep.
What else do buyer and seller need to bring to closing?
Normally just IDs. Just bring your driver's license. Make sure we can ID you.
Make sure it's a current driver's license and not an expired one.
It should be current. Yes, absolutely. It should be a current driver's license.
I've had that happen before.
Gosh. We've had a couple that try to bring in like library cards or, as ID. That doesn't cut it. Government issued. But yeah, other than that, if we haven't clearly asked you to bring anything else to closing, such as maybe a death certificate or proof of your like trust information, then normally it's just your ID or money. You know, we do need money for closing, so the wire needs to be usually done before closing, and a confirmation of the wire is usually good, just in case we didn't receive it.
Can you explain to everybody what title insurance is?
Yes, title insurance is we are insuring your ownership of that property. So we don't insure the home, we don't do anything like that, but it's basically your ownership. So if you bought from a seller who happened to be, they forged a deed or something along those lines and it never got caught, we don't want you to lose your home because of some forgery that was done before you, or even a lien that was missed. So we protect that. So we usually will pay for the legal costs to get it fixed, and that's what we do. I mean, we ensure that you're not going to lose your home or your ownership.
So when you run a search for liens, how far back do you guys dig to look for stuff?
Typically, 60 years is what we go back. Anywhere from 30 to 60, but we go back as far as we can. Until there's no more documents to pull.
Okay.
So as far as we can, but yeah, I think average is anywhere from 30 to 60 years.
And so if a cloud, what we call a cloud on title, comes up before closing, how do you address that?
Well, a cloud on title would be something that we can't insure. So we don't want to transfer any ownership over to the new buyer with the cloud on the title. So normally we have to fix it. We do a little bit of a digging. We've had problems where, deeds were done wrong, and then whoever had signed that deed has passed away because it had been an older deed. So we have to find ways around that to be able to say to our underwriters, who are the ones actually insuring it, that there's nothing to worry about anymore. So we usually go to the source, and we can do affidavits to help fix any kind of errors. So, it really just depends. It could be, the clouds are that's such a general term. It could be anything. But we go to who we need to go.
So it's kind of a case by case.
It is. It's very, very case by case. Yeah, you never see the same thing in title. It's different every day.
So Angela, who needs title insurance?
Anyone who owns a piece of property needs title insurance. Title insurance covers, or actually it protects you. It protects your ownership again. So whether it be a vacant lot that you plan on building on or commercial property, it's protecting your ownership of anything in the past, the history that could come up. That's what's different about title insurance. When you buy homeowners insurance, you're planning for future disasters or something that could possibly happen. Title insurance is really protecting you from the past of that property and what could have happened, and along the lines of recording deeds, legal documents that got recorded in the past. So protecting the past.
So how does someone purchase title insurance, and when do they pay for it? How does that work?
Normally it's done at closing. So when you, in a traditional transaction, you're going to have a seller, a buyer, a contract. You come to closing. During that whole process, we have already done our research on that property and searched the records and made sure that it was clear to close, clear to issue a title. So the title insurance, the policy is done on the day, technically on the day that the deed was recorded, which we always try to do it on the day of closing.
Okay. And so they pay for that?
With their closing costs, it's included. Here in our area, seller pays, but that's negotiable. It's a one-time fee, so it's not reoccurring. It's not happening every 2 years, 3 years. No, it's a one-time charge. It is depending on how much the property costs. Those fees are set by the state of Florida. It's not a title company to title company type fee. It's one fee. And then that insurance policy will last you as long as you own the property, and not just you. If you give it to your kids, or if you want to give it to somebody else, as long as you're not selling it to a completely different person, that insurance policy comes back and protects you as long as you own the property.
So it will stay in your family, but once you sell or transfer that to a new owner, then they would be responsible for purchasing their own.
Yes. Yeah. If they want to be protected, they should buy their own.
So that just made me
policy.
think of another question.
Okay.
A lot of people are confused with a lender's policy versus an owner's policy.
Okay.
Can you tell them what the difference is
Yeah.
there?
Well, the lenders are protecting themselves, so they want you to buy lender's title insurance.
Will
to
they
cover.
require that?
Yes, absolutely. Every lender has the lender insurance requirement, and you, as the buyer, are going to be responsible to pay for that, and that's all included in your closing costs. But yeah, the lenders want to be protected, so if something happens where, you know, the property becomes, there's an issue with the property and they have to sell it, or if they lose the property for any reason, you know, the lender wants to be repaid on that loan. So that's basically what it is.
So you want to make sure you get the buyer's coverage so that it covers you.
Yeah, lender's insurance only covers the lender. The owner's policy is going to protect you as a buyer. So that's absolutely the most important part for you.
So let's talk about tax prorations. That's a question that we get a lot. How do those work, Angela? And who's responsible for that tax bill at the end of the year?
Good question. So we get that question a lot too. Tax prorations are going to be different depending on what county you live in. So we are locally here in Lee County, and Lee County taxes are paid in arrears, which means you pay for your taxes at the end of the year that we're in. So say, you know, we are in 2017. The tax bill comes out in November of 2017, you have until April to pay. So the tax prorations are done on the day of closing. So say we close August 31st, the seller will give a credit to the buyer at closing from January 1st through August 31st. And then the rest will be responsible to for the buyer to pay. So when that bill comes up at the end of the year, the buyer is actually going to pay the entire bill because the seller gave them a proration at closing for the time that they did own and live in the property. So that's how that's handled.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. Okay. So then, you know, you mentioned before we were talking about escrow. I mean, not escrow, but we were talking about closing, and you mentioned the term escrow funds or escrow money. So a lot of times when we're going through, you know, our process of helping a buyer buy a home, we fill out in the contract earnest money, and they go, well, what is that? So what can we explain to people, you know, how you guys handle escrow money?
Yeah, and escrow money is basically the buyer showing a promise that they are interested in that property. It shows the seller that they're serious. And every contract is written differently. Most of the time it's within 3 business days that the title company or settlement company needs to receive those funds. So we are always on the lookout for that money. As soon as we get a contract, we're usually, you know, very vigilant on checking for those funds. We get them through wires. We do take personal checks as well. But as long as the closing date's far enough away where those funds can clear, we'll take.
Last but not least, I want to talk about homestead exemptions because it's always another hot topic. So can you talk about that a little bit? What's a homestead exemption?
Homestead exemption is when you live in the property as your primary residence. You can get a portion reduced off of your taxable value. So say your home is valued normally at $100,000. If it's your homestead, you get a $25,000 deduction off of that. So then your property will only be taxed for $75,000. So it gives you a really good break depending on how much value your home has. And each spouse can do 25. So the total could be 50,000 total if you have a husband and wife both claiming homestead.
And that's just to be a resident. And
Yes.
then there's there's some other tax exemptions like for veterans, widows, senior citizens, and those that are permanently or totally disabled. So
yeah, you pretty much hit them all.
all.
And they're all different. So if you have any of those, if you qualify for any of those, I would check with the Lee County property appraisers.
Lona Leugers, Leugers Real Estate Advisors, Jones & Co. Realty. So Angela, what did you think about the radio show?
It was a lot of fun. I thought I'd be way more nervous, but it ended up being lots of fun, lots of good conversation. I really enjoy educating the public about what we do, about closings, title insurance, what it is, the mystery of title insurance. So it was fun.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. I enjoy it too. So guys, if you are thinking about buying, selling, or building real estate in Southwest Florida, Angela, give us a call, shoot us a text or an email. Our information is at the bottom of the screen along with Angela's information. If you have any questions as it directly relates to title for Angela, please reach out to her as well.
Yeah.
Lona Leugers, thanks for watching.